Unbelievable. It has only been 11 months, not even 11 months, since I bought this tree and brought it home. It was at the time full of fruits and I harvested the fruits, planted them, and well, now I have pots and pots of seedlings. I did create a video about this kaki. And when I planted the seeds, there were some comments on the channel that I was just planting the seeds for show and then they go into the compost. Well, I'm here today to show you, no, I did not put these in the compost. Now there's a lot of weeds in these little seedling pots, so I'm going to weed them all out now. And while I do that, why don't you go and watch the video all the way from the beginning. I'll start 10-11 months ago when I just had brought this kaki home and I started growing the seeds. Now these fruits, the mice also like them. I already noticed because I had one fruit here on the table. The next morning it was gone. I'm going to harvest the fruits. These fruits are very old. Some of them are soft and started to rot. I hope that they have been kept outside these plants so that the seeds will germinate, because there's no more time to give them a cold period. We'll see. So this one actually has 2 seeds. And now it is important to clean these seeds up a little bit. I'm going to wash them later. But first let me just get all of these out of the fruits. I understand that these seeds have a very low germination rate, so I'm just going to put quite a lot of them here in one pot. And if they do germinate all, then I'll just over summer have to gently transplant them. But I also don't want dozens of pots to be sitting around. And we'll see how this goes. The substrate is just left over from sieving my substrate, and I just use that every once in a while for propagation. I'll water this well, I'll put a rock on top, and then we'll just put it outside until spring. These bricks have been on top of this pot for all of winter. It's now the middle of May. And yesterday I peeked and there's nothing there except for some unwelcome visitors. Maybe I should get rid of these. So I started digging around a little bit in the pot yesterday. And what I've noticed is that at least one seed was starting to germinate. I guess I'll have to do a little bit of engineering. That will stop the mice initially, and hopefully it will allow the seeds to come up and I can take these big bricks off. What? You'll be surprised if it works? Well, you know what? I will be surprised if it works. But if it works, then at least the mice will not eat my seeds. If anybody has a better solution for this, let me know. But this at least should give some protection, right? And now I can just check through the holes and see whether anything comes up. Seems stable enough. Look at that. They're germinating. But somehow the seed coat doesn't seem to come off. Also here 2 other seeds are coming up. Here are a few leaves. Let's see how this works. I think I have to start putting it in the sun and stop protecting it from any critters. That is a risk, so I just wanted to show you these plants. Who knows, mice might come by, right? It is July and lots of these seeds have started to germinate and they're coming up out of the ground. But what you can also tell, the seed coats don't come off all that well by itself. And I've been trying over the last couple of days to help some of them out. And let's see whether I can help some more and show you what I do. This really is tricky as the seeds are very fragile. But I've noticed that if I don't do this, then the seedling doesn't emerge from the seed properly. I don't know why. Maybe because of the substrate. But as you can tell, I'm now just using a knife and I'm sliding the knife in the seed coat. And then it pops open and the first leaves can emerge. Here I now have a seed that has fallen off and I don't have any leaves here. First week of August, and look at this. The pot is slut bang full of seedlings. They kept on coming up and up and up and up. This is really promising. There's little sprouts everywhere still coming up in this pot, and it is already full. I'm just going to leave all of these in place and I'm not going to repot, and I'm only going to repot them in early spring. That also means I'm fertilizing them now already in this pot and doing nothing else. It is late August, and I know I said I was just going to leave these in the container, but will you look at this? I think I'm going to try a few things. I'm going to gently slide this out, going to split it in half, and then half of them I'll pot up, some of them with root pruning and some of them without, and then we'll see how these recover and how the ones in this pot do compared to the ones that I transplanted. Now, just as a precaution, I have some water here, so I can just gently slide these seedlings in once they're out of the pot and avoid the roots drying out. Let's see whether they want to come out without too much trouble. I expect this to be one big root ball, but it isn't. Okay, that was not so gentle. Right. Now I have a whole bunch of seedlings laying flat here. This I'm just going to put back in this pot. Get this all potted up again. And now I'm curious to see what do the roots look like on these. Look, this is actually very little roots. That is really strange. They do have tiny little root tips, but as a whole there's very few roots on these. There's a very big difference in root development. These have hardly any side roots, right? But then there's these individuals with very many side roots and very healthy root tips. I'm going to separate those, and the ones with the healthy side roots, half of them I'm going to trim back, the other half I'm going to plant up individually, and the ones without any side roots I'm just going to plop in a bigger container with good substrate in the hope that they do develop. I'll mix shredded wood with, what is it, mostly pumice, lava and zeolite. 2-to-1. Twice as much inorganic as organic, and use that as my base substrate for these. Right, one larger pot for the ones with bad roots and 8 smaller ones for the better roots, and I'll add some of this coarse substrate at the bottom just so that the finer substrate doesn't fall through. You know, just a little layer, then a little layer of my regular substrate, and ready for planting up. Right, how many do I actually have that have decent roots? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Is there not just a single one? Not really. This one, but you know, it's not very healthy. Okay, 8. Then half of them to plant as is, and other half reduce the root ball by half. Let's see what I've just killed all of these. Now this of course now has a massive root pin, and I just need to flip it around a little bit, hold it down and fill it up. Done. For these, where I clipped the root tip, it should be possible to just plant them. Fill, a little shake, make sure all the roots are in the pot. None of these roots are really great. I think also here I'm just going to take half of these and reduce the roots. Just cut half of it off and see whether this stimulates other rooting. These are going to go in one side of the pot, and these where I don't do anything, they're going to go on the other side of the pot. Now that will be a little bit of a tricky thing. These need to go last, but let's see how this works. Now I just want to know how these respond to these sort of treatments, and then you also know how these respond to these treatments, right? And I'll revisit these in early spring, which is too early for a repotting then, but it will give me an insight in what the roots have done and what they look like. Early spring, late winter. A few weeks have passed, and I must say, not a single one died yet. All of these in individual pots are doing really well. In fact, I might be mistaken, but I think they are actually starting to bud out again. So that's good. I don't see a clear difference between the ones where I clipped lots and where I didn't clip. In fact, they all look the same to me, so I can't even tell which is which. Now this pot is the pot where I just took whatever was left over and bunched it in here, and these are the ones that I clipped really badly, and you can tell here that the leaves are wilting. So I think that the ones where I quite crudely pruned off the roots are dying, but the rest is doing well. And also the original pot full of seedlings, from which I took half, they don't seem to have any objections. So I would say repotting already in this stage is quite successful. Now normally I would have also tried to wire these, because it seems that this gets really brittle very quickly. But I'll leave it for now. I can always do that next year, or prune them back and get a new stalk to grow. It is however important to keep in mind that if you decide to cut these back, that this brown part is actually an area without. That on this brown part there are no dormant buds. The dormant buds start here from the place where you have the first seedling leaf. So everything below is actually root, or yeah, what is it? The initial stem? I don't know. But cutting back. Main point is cutting back into the brown might result in the whole plant dying off. Oh. Don't go. Welcome back. I hope that was enjoyable. Now I have meanwhile cleaned out. It is really crazy to see. Last night it was -3, -4 Celsius. That would be somewhere in the mid-20s Fahrenheit. So reasonable frost. Yet these are starting to grow already. So yeah, I don't know what's happening, but I got tiny little green buds on these. And also the main tree. They all sit outside. I don't know if you can see it, but can you see these big buds on there? So these are doing quite well. And I also found this nice little, I think it's one of my pink maple. Now the reason why I left all these weeds in there is, well, one, of course I'm lazy. But more importantly, I have birds and they dig in these pots. So when there's weeds growing, they don't pull out any of the plants. And it's easier for me to fertilize. So yeah, I just leave them in for the first 1 or 2 years. Right, middle of February. Let's take a look and see whether the roots have actually developed, because I clipped quite a few roots off. And I'm actually curious. It's not really the right time, so I'm not going to do all that much. I'm just going to take them out of the pot and take a look at 2 or 3 of these, see how well they've rooted into the pot, and yeah, leave the rest alone. Right. That looks nice. It's not very dense, but yeah, developed well. Let's plant it back into this pot. So really no root work. It's really just taking it out and putting it back in. We're still in the middle of winter. We're still getting frost. And these are, after all, a little bit warm climate, or at least that's what I think. I think they're warm climate. And let's take a second one and check a second one to see whether the roots look okay there. But this is just nice to see. I did some repotting in summer, as you saw, And now the roots are actually quite good. Roots, after all, are the basis of a good healthy tree. So checking the roots, look how well these have developed. There were no plants with so many fine side roots. This is actually one that I could start planting sideways. Not gonna, just gonna plant it back up. And one last one for good measure. And after that it should be clear whether the roots are doing okay. Oh wow, this looks like a root. Also here, look at this. Compare that to the earlier images of the roots. These have really developed well. I think with that they're ready for spring. Not gonna do all that much this year, I'm just gonna let them grow, fertilize, sun, water. Then, for growing these out, you might be wondering, why do I have these in these tiny little pots? Wouldn't it go a lot faster in the full ground? And absolutely you are right, but I like to grow my seedlings slow, particularly in the first few years as I'm developing the base of the trunk line. I prefer to grow them out in a pot. If you don't understand this or you don't know why, maybe this is an interesting video for you. And otherwise, as said, there is a whole video on this persimmon or kaki right there. This was Jelle, growing bonsai with kaki from seed. Yes, you can. See you next time. Keep growing bonsai.